Hello, and welcome to Ben and Matt Watch the Booth at the End.
Brought to you by the Sci-Fi Christian. We are finally at the end of the Booth at the End.
Well, the season, you say that like you're happy. Are you happy about the end of the Booth?
I'm happy to see a final episode. Complete story.
The season finale,
Yeah.
It was a great episode.
It was.
So,
Culmination to maybe we should just start out by saying, Matt, you were right. I was wrong.
Finally, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, but before we talk about the actual show,
Well, don't we want to say what you were right about?
I know it, but we'll come back. We'll talk about the story,
little
the
teaser.
plot points,
Yeah.
right? So, on this week's episode of the Sci-Fi Christian Podcast, which will be releasing very soon, well, tonight. By the time you see this video,
It'll actually be up before this
exists.
video, so there will be a link. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've put a link in the info box,
And
right where I'm pointing.
on this week's episode, we got to interview CK, the creator of The Booth at the End.
Yeah, so that was awesome. We talked to him for an hour.
Yeah, that interview was awesome. So thank you, CK, for being on the show.
Definitely.
We had a great time, so thank you for that.
Yeah, he was great.
So, Ben, I have it all laid out here, all my notes.
Well, maybe we should just,
alert.
before we move on to that, just to tease a couple things about the interview.
Yeah.
You will learn such things as, will there be a season 2?
Yes, you
of the
will.
Booth at the End? We have the answer in this interview.
Yeah.
I'm not going to share it here on the review.
No, we can't.
And learn...
We'll learn about how did the show come to be.
Yeah.
Where did the idea first come from?
Right.
You know, how was it constructed? How did the casting happen?
Let's get into some of the philosophy of the morality of the show with him. So
We talked about some of the main themes of the show.
yeah, so lots of good stuff
Yeah.
in that interview. Just a tease for you. You definitely want to check it out.
Definitely. So,
But
Ben,
let's get to the finale.
all right, the
Good
finale.
stuff.
It really, you said it already. It really wrapped it up very well.
Yeah.
Every storyline was right, and you said I was right.
You were.
I think there was two things I was right about. No, what?
There were.
Okay,
Yeah, two.
Go ahead.
So number one, Mrs. Tyler did not come back this
I figured
week.
that was
You
the
were
end.
right.
Yep.
Though she still has that bomb. So if there is a season 2,
Maybe.
who knows? Maybe we will
Yeah.
see more of Mrs. Tyler.
And we saw. Let's talk about what I've been saying is my favorite storyline all along.
Yeah, this is the one I was
Yeah.
really referencing earlier.
But I
James
mean,
and Willem.
Now that it's over, and I'm looking at all the storylines, with, you know, as we saw how it all tied together, there's other ones that have now are meaning more to me than they did originally.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
the James and Willem ones, which I've been following carefully, even though it's interesting, maybe that wasn't the most important thing happening.
Yeah.
I was distracted.
Yes.
So let's talk about it. James and Willem. It was awesome. Willem is saying, I think we saw. Let's see here. James first. Nope, that's not right. We saw Willem first.
We did.
And he was saying that James has been following him. He knows where he lives. So Willem followed him back to his own house.
Oops.
And he's got a plan. He's
Yeah.
going to stop James from killing the girl by killing him himself.
That is a good strategy.
And the man tried to convince him not to, in a sense. I mean, he was...
Good.
Well, he was saying, you know, you only have 2 weeks left of your 10 weeks of protecting her. You don't have to do this, basically, is what he was saying. I don't think he ever said you don't have to do this.
Yep.
I think he might have said something along the lines of, you have a lot of choices. But Willem had his mind set on murder.
And murder did happen.
Well, James didn't take very kindly to Willem's plan.
He killed him.
He did. So Willem came at him with a knife. James got the upper hand, and...
Oh!
Right. No sound effects necessary next time.
Oh!
Okay. So, anyways, then James checked Willem's pockets and found evidence or clues on where the girl was. So now he can go kill the girl and complete his task.
But James becomes a bit soft-hearted.
He does.
Does not kill the girl, but his son's still okay.
Yeah, miraculously cured on the very day that he didn't complete his task.
What do you make of that?
Okay, I make something of it. And
No, that's what I'm asking you.
This is what I think is happening here. I think it's safe to say the man himself maybe isn't evil, but we know that he's working for somebody who is evil. In fact, when James at the end says, "You're a monster," he says, "I feed monsters." Or can you quote it better than me?
No, I think you got it about right.
Yeah, you might say, "I feed monsters."
Yeah, that was a great line.
Yeah, and so
He draws out what's inside of you.
James is really mad because the task was to kill a girl, and he was going to kill a girl,
Yeah.
a little girl. And so the reason he thinks the man is a monster is because he got what he wanted, James did, without actually doing this thing. And that was always a possibility.
Right.
And so I kind of checked off who I think things into good and bad for. And
Yep.
James is kind of half and half because on one hand he did get his son cured.
But he kind of destroyed his soul in the process.
Exactly, and that I think is the larger thing, the greater bad.
Yes.
So I think in the end, James did not get what he wanted.
Yeah. So let's briefly talk about probably the storyline with the least interesting stuff happening.
Oh, the least interesting?
Yeah.
Who are you going to call out?
Sister Carmel and Simon. It was interesting, but in terms of like the big fireworks of Willem dying, Sister Carmel is pregnant, and Simon got her pregnant.
Yeah.
And so both of them got what they wanted.
Good job, guys. Way to go. And they were they were extremely happy.
Yeah.
You know, Simon now was able to recognize that his art was as good as he wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Sister Carmel is hearing from God again. I almost said from the man.
Who's that guy?
No, I almost said God. Yeah, that's right. Right. So
you blanked on God's name.
No. Yes. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've hit a new low.
So they're both extremely happy. So that was good. Let us go to.
Actually, the one that was probably the most intriguing for me was Alan's storyline and how.
Yeah, did he turn around?
Yeah, because he was like Mr. Jerk the entire time.
Yeah.
And he really learned some stuff about himself.
And you know, there was a couple characters that really genuinely thanked the man at the end of their storylines, and Alan was one of them.
He was.
Shook his hand, thanked him. He realized that Richard really ended up the way he ended up because of the way that Alan had fathered him.
Now, Richard changed his desire from wanting to have his dad leave him alone.
Only one task at a time, Ben.
Yeah, to wanting to have Jenny not want what she wants.
Yes.
If you're following that.
Yep.
It's explained better in the show.
But in a sense, Jenny did get what she wanted. And I mean, because when Richard recognized she's already pretty, I mean, and being
but in a sense, though, she didn't, because she wanted to be prettier until I'm pretty enough. And actually, when she's sitting there, she's been beat up a little bit. And she has some bruises on her face.
You know what I noticed?
She's satisfied.
She looked more rough. Like she's changing her look to more of a Richard type look.
Right.
Like so
she has changed a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But she's done robbing banks. So is Richard, and they're going to go somewhere.
Yeah, because what happened is the man gave him a new task. Call your dad. You don't have to believe it, but you have to say you love him.
Yeah.
Alan picked up on the fact that he was lying, and this sent him down a road. And do you want to talk a little bit about how Alan kind of ended up with things?
Well, he had been tasked to find a dirty cop in his precinct and protect him. And he came to the realization that I'm the dirty cop.
Not you, Alan.
No, not me. No. I am neither a cop nor dirty.
Okay.
Alan was the dirty cop, and he has been protecting himself for his entire life. And so he realized, you know what, I've been a very terrible person, and I'm going to turn my life around.
And, you know, one of the inciting incidents in Alan's life, besides his own son's lying, manipulating phone call, was the fact that he ignored a girl who came to him with some evidence about a murder.
Are we going to get to the big one now?
Well,
Melody's storyline. And again, I was wrong. Mr. Ron, I predicted, was going to turn out to be a good guy after all. No.
Nope, I was correct. So
Ron, pretty sadistic.
Yeah, so Melody had a great plan. And again, she's one of the characters, I believe she thanked the man for the opportunity to complete his task.
She never really completed the task.
She did complete the task.
Oh yes, she did complete the task.
So she
kinda.
No, completely. She what her plan was.
It didn't end very well.
The police won't take him out. He's not gonna.
She calls Alan.
Well, she calls the department and gets sent to Alan, and Alan basically ignores her because he had his mind on other things.
Yeah.
So she got, I'm guessing, chloroform. Is that kind of the stuff you... No, it's okay. Okay, no more of that.
No more.
And she thinks she's going to knock out Ron and then drag him outside, thus completing her task.
And she kind of does.
Kind of. She subdues him.
Ron is not as knocked out as one might hope.
No.
And then he kills her.
We don't really know how he kills her, but...
We'll probably assume a knife.
Okay. So... Yes, she dies.
That's body Melody 3 for this review.
Melody dies. That was really sad. Yeah. I mean, that hit me more than I would have thought because I never felt very attached to Melody as a character.
Yeah.
But you know, when Alan is kind of talking about something, he alluded to the fact that something bad happened to Melody. You can see the man is interested and wondering what's going to happen next. And you know, we haven't talked about Doris yet. And you know, there's not much that really happened with them. We can see that Doris and the man are still connecting. They have a back and forth about not sleeping well, and the man smiles, and so he's kind of showing the first bit of happiness, because I don't know if he smiles a lot in the show, like meaningfully.
No, not very much.
And that's not the end. Doris' story is not the end.
Then we get to the big one where we get a new character.
A brand new character. And did you know right away who he was?
No.
Me either. Gerald.
Yeah. But we find out, as Gerald begins to tell his story, that he is Melody's father.
He is. And
he's
been having some money problems.
Not anymore.
And one day, all of a sudden, a business thing he'd been working on works out. All the money problems are over. But on that very day, now what we know as the audience is that Melody had dragged Ron out completing her task.
And her desire was to have her dad not have money trouble. Yeah. So that solves that.
But she died on the same day that the money problems ended.
And Gerald comes and says, "I want my daughter back to life."
And then he asks, "Can you do that?" And then right here, the soundtrack is so awesome. Do you remember the music that was playing during this scene?
Yeah, it's really good.
It was, yeah.
This was perfectly done.
Yeah, perfectly done. And so there's a close up on the man's mouth. And, and right before that he's saying, "Melody, you want Melody alive again?" And he says her name, whereas Gerald hasn't said her name yet.
Yeah.
And then the man responds.
Well, before we give his response,
okay.
What did you think it was going to be?
I thought it is going to be what it was.
Yeah.
Did you know it was going that way?
I thought so too.
So just to remind you, Gerald has asked for his dead daughter to come back to life, and the man responds,
"That can happen."
And then we go to the end of the show.
That was so good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And let's say, we don't want to give away any spoilers on our interview. Let's say there never is a season 2.
Yep.
That was still a perfect ending.
It was great.
But I guess we'll have to see if we see any more of that story.
Now, Matt, I have a question for you.
Okay.
There were a couple things that we never really found out about. For example, Jenny at one point had said to the man, they were talking about her desire, and she said, he was questioning her, "Is that what you really want? Do you really want to be pretty?" And she said, "No, what I really want, not even your magic could do."
Oh, okay.
And we never found out what that was. Does that bother you, or does that add intrigue to the show?
Intrigue, and I haven't thought about it since.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that for me, the show is so minimalist in its style, and that's one of its really big strengths. So it didn't bother me that there was a few things like that we never really found out. Maybe if season 2 does happen, they'll explore some of that stuff. But who knows? I'm good at the show as it is, and that it feels very complete to me.
I made a list myself, Ben, but let's just roll down the characters really quickly.
Yeah.
And do you think they ended positive or negative?
Okay.
Good or bad? So, Alan.
Good.
I agree. Richard. Her son. Alan's son.
Yes, sorry.
That's good.
Good.
Jenny.
Good.
Willem.
Bad. Well, he's dead.
Melody.
Bad.
Yeah, I mean, we have to go through all the list. James.
I agree with you, mixed.
It's a mix, but heavy on the bad.
Yep.
Sister Carmel and Simon.
Good.
Doris.
Good.
I think it is ending good for. I mean, if this isn't really her end, though, I don't think.
No.
I mean, there's still, even if we never see any more from the show, there seems to be something that could happen. And finally, I think we have Mrs. Tyler. Similar to James.
Yeah.
She was willing to do something that she didn't actually do, but that was almost worse.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know.
So
Mrs. Tyler maybe got to a pretty dark place in her soul, and I'm not sure she'll find her way out.
And James, he felt like he couldn't kill the little girl because he couldn't be that kind of father. But now he has to wrestle with the fact that he tried to run over this family.
Right.
He has attempted murder. Is he going to be able to live with that the rest of his life?
I almost feel better about James than I do Mrs. Tyler, because James decided on his own to not kill the girl, whereas Mrs. Tyler's husband got better.
Yeah.
And because of that, she didn't blow up the bomb. So she seems to be in a darker place, whereas James seems to ultimately make the right decision.
Do you know the connection on how Gerald ended up there at the diner?
No.
Do you remember how Melody first ended up there?
It was a friend of hers?
It was like a family friend or something. I think it was maybe even her dad's friend, and he had ended up committing suicide. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And so obviously the man had him do something that he couldn't live with. I could see something like that happening with James. Like, can he live with himself now?
That's true.
And Mrs. Tyler, she's old. She's gonna be able to live with herself.
Yeah.
But James, he has a long life ahead of him.
Very
so,
and such a great show.
Yeah, I know. I loved it. So Ben, I think that really brings an end
Absolutely.
to these 5 reviews we've done for this amazing show, The Booth, at the end.
Be sure to check out our podcast episode. Again, the link is in the info box on YouTube, right below where you're watching this.
Yep. And we'll be back with more reviews of different shows, and maybe you'll see us here again in the future.
Always check us out on thescifichristian.com.
Well, that's all from here. I'm Matt Anderson.
And I am Bendy Bono.
We're the Sci-Fi Christians, signing off.